Good afternoon. This is the City of Marion work session for the City Council, Tuesday, July 21, 2015. At this time, we have a presentation regarding the new library from the Library Board. Front and center, please. And identify yourself with an address. Thank you.
Okay, start over. Okay, Mr. Mayor, council members and members of city staff, I'm Lois Foster. I'm a member of the Marion Library Board, and other board members today are Susan Kling and Eileen Robinson, and I think that's it. We're here this afternoon to provide the council with a brief update regarding the library building project. Director Doug Raber has an update on the selection of an architect and a question for you. Brad Thomason from Marion Companies has an announcement about an upcoming visual survey event that will be held at the library on July 28th.
Thank you. I am Doug Raber, your library director. Here to basically update you quickly on the selection of an architect. The library board formed a building committee, and in that building committee they created a architect selection subcommittee, and we solicited 5 responses to a request for qualifications for library architects. We contacted 5 architectural firms that we knew had experience in designing public libraries, because that was important. We wanted to make sure that we were dealing with a firm that knew what they were doing with the library. Of the 5, the subcommittee chose to interview 3 firms, and of the 3 firms interviewed, 3 firms were Martin Gardner Architecture locally, OPN and in Cedar Rapids, and Enberg Anderson. And the subcommittee recommended to the board that Enberg Anderson, particularly and specifically Joe Huberty, who we've worked with before, be hired by Ryan Companies as the library architect. That recommendation was passed to the board. Then at a special public meeting on July 6th, the board got together and directed Ryan Companies to go ahead and make that hire, and Enberg Anderson has been engaged. So we're all really excited about this. Enberg Anderson has, and specifically Joe Huberty, who's a public library specialist, has designed over 100 public libraries. Again, most particularly the one that's relevant and nearby you can go see is Iowa City Public Library. That's his work. We're real pleased that his design team includes an architect with a background in librarianship and education, and so we're looking forward to working with that designer, particularly to design in learning experiences into the children's department. So that's the quick update on the library architect selection. We'll be meeting with Joe on the end of the month, July 28th, 29th, to begin doing some preliminary planning. I am currently working on what's called a program statement, an attempt to identify some of the key design principles and some of the critical features and look and feel characteristics we want. This is actually not new stuff. Most of this actually is currently in the needs assessment document that we published over a year ago. But I'm looking at that to revise it, bring it up to date. There's been a few developments since then. And when that document's ready, we'll post that on the Inspire website and share that as well. So that's where we're at on that one. The question I wanted to ask you tonight is actually basically along those lines. I'm going to ask you one question, basically, that has potentially a lot of implications and a lot of answers. And I will follow up with you about this, too, because I know that you can't really get what you possibly want to say or need to say in response to a single question like this. But I thought this would be a good starting point with each of you for a continued discussion about what we need to make sure that this library can do. And frankly, what I'm about to ask doesn't make any difference what the building is. It has to do with what the library does. And the question is simply this. In your mind, what's the most important thing that the library does for Marion? Or alternatively, what's the most important service that it delivers for Marion? give you an example of what I'm thinking about, you could say, children's services broadly, or you could say something as specific, those new early literacy learning kits. But I'm kind of interested in the response of each one of you about that, just to see what you're thinking about, what's the most important thing the library does for the city, for the community, and for the citizens. So I've got an empty notepad here and ready to take notes. And again, I know this is a quick answer. It just sort of like what I'm thinking of as a first impression, kind of did that deliberately, and I'll follow up with each of you on this for more detail to see where your thinking goes. So if anybody has a suggestion, I'm open. Yeah, Kim?
Having computers available.
Beg your pardon?
Computers available.
Okay. Are you thinking,
Well, I've heard many people go there maybe to fill out like financial aid papers, and they sometimes use.
I just wondered if you were thinking about if it made a difference whether it was laptops or desktops.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not so much, just to be
I
able
know
to, for people who don't have access to
Right.
the internet and for the computers.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else, any thoughts at this time?
I think the programs that you have, like Mr. Buckley, you've had him, and you've had Mr. Lincoln visit the library. So programs like that, and then the programs for the children that you have there. So, a meeting room, a large meeting room, I think is something sorely needed. Larger.
So the adult programs you do think are useful and worthwhile, in other
Pretty
words?
much
Yeah.
so.
Okay,
Yes.
good, okay. That's one thing, we struggle with sometimes, frankly, because sometimes we'll, bring in a speaker or a presenter who we think is just going to be a smash hit, and no one shows up, and other times we aren't really sure, and the next thing we're trying to figure out is, can we get around the fire code on this one? But yeah, that's good to know. We'll keep trying that. Thanks. Again, these are important things that we need to think about going forward, no matter what happens. So that's one of the things I wanted to ask. So
I know my wife has supported the bookstore, too. We've probably given you lots of money for the Friends.
that does help a great deal, actually. Actually, this is good news, as a matter of fact. We currently now make enough money from the book sales in the bookstore that those funds are included as part of the city audit. And I'm working with the city auditor right now to gather up the financial records for the Friends and Foundation. And actually, it's not difficult at all, and we're actually really pleased by that. It's a good sign. So, okay. Yeah.
I think your children programs are really, really excellent. The summer programs you have are outstanding. I think that's very good.
Yeah, we're really, we'd really like to expand the summer program. We know that actually this summer our numbers are up again in terms of number of kids participating, and that's a case where we just need more of everything to deal with more of everything. But yeah, thanks, I appreciate that. That's something that we've put a lot of emphasis on, and we're looking for actually new funding sources for children's summer, especially summer reading programs. So that's good to know. If you don't have anything now, of course, I'm always happy to take something later. And again, I will follow up with you whether you suggest something now or not, just to see if something occurs to you later. But this is a starting point. We've also just closed a user survey, and again, that survey really was aimed at library users to see what they needed, and again, to get that idea of okay, what's the community need from us, and what's our most important services. That's where we want to focus. We want to make sure that we're concentrating our resources and offering strong programs rather than spreading too thin. Yeah.
Doug, I would hope that the Oxley books are under lock and key most of the time. Historically, I wish we could put together something to print those so the public they'd be more accessible. Our schools don't spend much time teaching Marion history or any time teaching Marion history. And I think it's important that people have the ability to get into that locked case, and we try to reprint what we can so people can check those books out, and there's a wealth of information about our past, and hopefully we'll be able to do that.
One of the things that I know, at least I'm thinking about anyhow, is along those lines. increasingly, of course, archives throughout the country are digitizing their print documents, not only for preservation purposes, but also for access purposes. Once you've got it digitized, it's accessible remotely, and you don't have to come to the library to use it. And, of course, use doesn't cause further decay. So, yeah, that's something that we're looking at and hoping to be able to move towards, yeah.
I know we have a lot of the Sentinel on microfiche. The Depot Pride folks have the entire morgue. Scott Hansen has it in his basement. And, there again, that's full of a wealth of our history, and that would be a valuable tool, I think,
Okay.
that certainly would be available.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
I think in answer to your question, Doug, to narrow it down is the difficult part for me, but the two things that I come up with are kind of what Kim was saying. It fills a hole in the community, offering internet access to those who don't have it. I know a lot of us take it for granted, but there are a lot of people that don't have access, and this allows that for a number of things. The biggest thing that I know I have used it for personally is the children's services, and it's always full in there, and it's always good interaction, because I think one thing that is overlooked today is, especially the younger generation, and I can attest to this with my daughters, the face-to-face skills are lacking because everyone is on their phone, and to get into the library, to the events that you have there, and actually talk to someone that's physically present, I think is a huge, huge service with the library.
Okay, appreciate that, thanks. Good. Anybody else? Well, like I said, we will definitely, I'll follow up with all of you and explore this further and make sure that we've got the input. One thing that I am pleased to hear is that you've identified things that we are doing. I was certainly open to hearing something, okay, here's something we aren't doing. I better write that one down. So at least we're on the right track. But that's the kind of input that I was looking for. And again, it's just a starting point for a broader discussion about what we need to do and what libraries generally need to do moving forward. Not just libraries in general, but for us specifically, the Marion Public Library. You can talk about trends in library services, and you need to think about those in terms of whether they're relevant to your own community. But that's the key thing, relevant to your own community. What does Marion need? That's what we're trying to start and talk about. And that's really about all I have on an update. Brad Thomason from Ryan Companies, I'll introduce him, actually kind of leads into that, is here to talk about, like I said, a visual survey that Lois mentioned, a visioning session that we're going to schedule in about a week, and he'll give you more detail on that. So,
excuse me,
Yes.
are you going to be available for Thursday's meeting? Because I know a lot of these folks out here have questions that they would like answered before you go much further, and they're the people that use the library, and they're the ones that pay the taxes, and they're the ones that support it financially.
yes, that could be possible, absolutely, yeah. Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Brad?
Good afternoon. Again, Brad Thomas on the Ryan Companies. Doug's comment about relevance to the community really hits it on the head. I don't know if you've gotten the invitation yet or not, but an invitation went out to the City Council, to the Facility Committee for the Library, the Uptown District business owners, basically to do a interactive presentation next Tuesday over at the library from 5:30 to 7:30, where visual images will be shown and people will vote whether you like it or don't like it, essentially to get some input on the aesthetic of the exterior of the library. We know we have design guides for Uptown Marion. Those are in the hands of the architects, so there are a lot of prescribed aspects of the design that we will have to follow anyway, but there will be other components that we just want to see what the relevance to Marion is for the community of, I like that, I don't like it. It'll be almost as simple as that, a series of images. We will have little voters, electronic voting for 50 people. If we have more than that, it'll be the first 50 that show up that'll actually have the interactive, but people can state an opinion. But that will give us the kickoff point for developing a concept of what this might look like, which leads into really the next 30 days for us would be to get some input on the vision for the library and then develop a concept that we can then prepare some initial exterior images and then have some open houses where we get public, probably a couple different meetings where we invite the city to to come in and look at them and give us their opinion. But right now, we don't have anything for you to look at. So this would be the first step, is to get people's opinions and then turn that into some type of image to present to the community for their input. That's really what I had. We're waiting for that. Now that we have an architect on board, it's easier for us to start something that we can get some feedback on. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I just had one quick question for you. The architect that was hired, that Doug was talking about, was that specifically for the library portion, or was that for the project in its entirety?
For the library portion.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. We may proceed to public services.
When is that meeting, Kim? When is that meeting?
On Tuesday from 5:30 to 7:30.
I have a question for on number one, sir,
Yeah.
before you start.
Go ahead.
And that is, what is architecture for the public service facility design services?
Sure. I don't know if the council recalls, but right now we're going through a site planning series for public service. One of the things we have to do in order to complete the site plan is to get initial layout of any proposed facilities or buildings for the purposes of the utilities. And so to go ahead and complete any type of site plan, the engineer, Anderson Bogart, is who we have under contract. They're looking to get at least a good general idea of where to place the utilities for our site plan. So that's what they're currently working on right now.
Thank you.
That answers the question. So item number 2 on our agenda, this is discussion regarding sanitary sewer claims policy. This is kind of a new phenomenon, but currently within the city of Marion, we do have a sanitary sewer claims policy in place, but it is somewhat, I would say, old and regimented. And the reason why I say that is that very seldom is a city responsible for any type of sanitary sewer backup that may occur in a residence. I'm going to go into that in just a sec. So the purpose of the program is twofold. Number one, it's to promote the use of sanitary backflow devices in residential dwellings. And basically what that is, it allows sewage to leave the residence without backing up into the residence, and for very good reason. Second thing is to provide what I call kind of a stopgap coverage for those gray areas that we experience in the city. Recently, we've had some court decisions that have outlined those gray areas, and now a lot of the cities, municipalities are having to put together a program to somewhat protect themselves, and we'll kind of get into that here in a sec. So obviously, there's a couple different components in our sanitary sewer infrastructure. First being the private sewer line, that's the resident sewer line as it goes out to the main. Anything on that line is private, therefore they're responsible. So if there's a blockage in that private line, obviously the city's not held liable for that. With the city sewer main, that's usually out in the middle of the street, not always, but usually. And often enough, we do experience blockages. Sometimes we go years without a blockage. Sometimes we experience a couple per year for whatever reasons. Usually, the city, up to this point, unless they're negligent, is very seldom not held responsible for any type of backup that may occur from the sanitary sewer main. The reason being, the city has to be negligent in order for that to occur. Okay? And so if we know of a blockage and we fail to go out and clean it or anything like that, the city can be held responsible, but seldom do we do that. If there is a blockage and we have constructive notice of it, usually we go out there, we alleviate the line, and then obviously our insurance reviews that. And if there is a backup within the residence, often enough our insurance policy with the city does not cover that. What we're seeing, though, recently is a lot of residents don't have the appropriate coverage for these backup events. And with that, we're also seeing a change in legalities as they pertain to how the city is held responsible. Specifically, we're seeing a lot of court cases that has to do with what we call SSOs, or sanitary sewer overflows. And that occurs when we get a significant amount of groundwater or rainfall. If we get a heavy rainfall event, it gets into the sanitary sewer. It succumbs to that sanitary line. and what happens, it backups into the resident's basement. Just recently, in Bettendorf and Davenport, they had the exact same thing happen. And so in Davenport, they settled that case. Bettendorf, that's kind of up in the air. In Marion, that does occur. If we get a heavy rainfall event, we have areas within the city that we have to initiate what we call bypass pumping. We put these pumps out through designated areas in the city in order to alleviate the groundwater that's getting into the sanitary line. So what the courts are doing, they're taking a look at this and saying, wait a minute, cities, you know this is a problem. How come you're not addressing it? And so when this happens, at least with these cities, what has happened is that they have found the cities liable. Okay? It is very difficult to address this issue citywide. Very expensive, almost impossible, because there's so many factors that go into the SSOs. But one thing that we are putting together with this policy is the opportunity to introduce what we call backflow preventers. These are devices that can be used on a residential dwelling that would assist and or aid sewage from backflowing into the residence. So with this policy, with this program, we would offer assistance to do so. We have many areas within the city that we've had significant issues with. And then with that, we'd have the opportunity to look at each specific case by case, to cover those gray areas. This is a program that we pretty much mirrored off of Davenport's program. With that, we found quite a few cities that are also putting this together. So that's the policy in place. It was included in your council packets. If there's any questions on it, I'll try to answer them. Ms. Lonstein, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of things I would point out about this is that some of the cases that have been settled against cities, they've found that they do not have a program like we do where we go in and repair sewers on an annual basis. So I don't think we have quite the level of risk that some of those other cities did. But one of the things that we really grapple with is that a homeowner can have a sewer backup in their house that literally is no fault of their own, and it's not the city's fault either. You know, we've had a couple of cases just in the last year where someone ended up with a backup into their house, and it might have been because a restaurant or an apartment complex had people putting grease or something down in the traps. It wasn't that homeowner's fault, and yet it wasn't the city's fault either. And as long as we follow through with our maintenance program, as Ryan has said, you know, we're not liable under the current state of Iowa law. At the same time, if they just submit a claim to their private to their private homeowners insurance, or we do something for them through our claims process, we also aren't doing something to prevent that problem from happening in the future. And when these programs are being set up, they are requiring those backflow preventers to be installed so that you're limiting the potential for a recurrence on that same property. I guess my concern is that, you know, if we have, for example, a 60-unit apartment complex at the end of a line that goes down through a whole bunch of residential neighborhoods, and one property has a problem, I don't want to have to work with that same homeowner 2 years later because there's been a recurrence of the same problem. If we can, in turn, though, turn around and identify who is causing the problem, we do have the ability to go back and seek cost recovery against them for the problems that they're causing. So it might result in us having to go back against some property owners at some cases, but that would strictly be to recover money that we've laid out for this. The whole idea behind it is really to minimize our future exposure and help out property owners, but we're not admitting fault and not admitting liability through the program.
So this device that you're proposing, would that be something the city would go in and install if it's like a recurring?
The city would install it. We'd offer assistance and obviously identify contractors that are licensed and capable to install it if they choose to do so.
Okay, so is the device owned by the city then, since it's attached to the...
Basically what happens, the way that policy is proposed, is that they agree to install it, and then they waive, you know, any future obligations to the city.
So
I wouldn't say any future obligations, but it is denoted that they have a backflow preventer. The city did assist them in installing that.
So it's similar to what, like the water valve?
Exactly.
It's the same idea?
Exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Yep. And last year, as Lon mentioned, one case in particular stuck out in my mind. We had a person just moved to the city of Marion, just retired. And during the heavy rainfall events last year, we did initiate some bypass pumping, but his residence backed up and he had all of his moving boxes downstairs.
No.
Almost everything, okay? And obviously his insurance carrier said, there's no way we're gonna help you. And they looked at the city and our insurance carrier said, well, no, there's no way. It was an act of God and that real good way to treat someone just moving into the city. But what had happened, someone during that event took a landscaping rock, literally a landscaping rock, dropped it in the city's sewer system, and it lodged in the main. And obviously, we can't prevent that. We did find it, but it had nothing to do with the overflow events or the rainfall. But it just went back into his sewer and backed up his residence. But things like that, I mean, there are a lot of gray areas that we have to deal with, and then you have to look at that resident and say, hey, you lost everything. I'm sorry. And so that's part of what this policy does, is try to remediate some of those problems.
So would it change the policy though to like in that instance you said, if they had the valve,
right?
That would the city would they help them with?
We would require them to install that backup valve. Typically, where we get backups is where we have issues, or a lot of the times that the sanitary for that residence was installed too shallow, so that they may realize all of the backups on that event.
I'm saying if that valve was installed, but they still had backup, then is the city liable still?
I think that's something we still have to work through. The way it's proposed, not really.
Okay.
But the way the policy is set up is so we can look at it case by case and try to address the unforeseen. That's the way we scripted the policy, because there's a lot of things we have not experienced yet.
Right.
Trust me, every year is a new thing for us, and that's the way we put that together. And so all of this would be addressed by the claims committee. We would review it and then go on a case-by-case basis.
Now, the claims committee reviews these claims as they come in now, case by case, and then renders a decision about whether or not the city is going to be able to help or not. This just would give that committee another tool when these type of claims come up. I think in the last 2 years, there's been 3, maybe 4 of them where this policy would have applied.
Do we have a fund available now, or will we set a fund?
This would be a new line item that we would create in the sanitary sewer budget and allocate $50,000 per year towards the program. If we have those years where we don't use it, then it would just get carried forward over to the next year.
Is this type of valve something where it would make sense to have it part of code for new construction or for reconstruction of private lines?
Potentially, I'd leave that to the building department. Obviously, I'm sure Lon's visited with them or will do so, but it definitely could be from here on out. The fact of the matter is, most of the issues that we realize within the city are in the older areas of town. Obviously, code does not address those, but we have some older infrastructure in those areas, and that's kind of what we have our sights set on for this program. So, but yeah, that's a good point. It'd be good to at least have a conversation about that. They may have an opinion about those devices as well, the building inspection. Thank you.
What does that device cost, just out of curiosity?
Installed, from what I've been told, it can run anywhere, and it depends. Everybody's house is different. What you have to, $1,500 to $2,500.
Okay.
And just to clarify, if the homeowner does have insurance, their insurance is still primary. I mean, we would require them to use their insurance, and if the remaining amount of the claim was not the full $7,500 that would be available, we would only do the remaining amount of the claim, not the whole $7,500. The idea really isn't to set up a fund to reimburse private insurance companies for events like this happening. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah.
Well, in addition to that, Lon, it does have a non-subrogation clause in it.
Right.
Which wouldn't allow them to do that. So.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, good enough. All right, thank you.
Most of that cost is the digging the big hole, right?
It depends on how it's set. Sometimes you just gotta put a piece on the pipe. It depends on how the line's set up, the plumbing's set up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very difficult. So yeah.
Chief, what is this presentation going to cost us?
Just time. How's that?
Very well.
Staff time.
Better.
Okay, good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the council. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, since being on the department. I was an instructor for the Mass Fatality Institute, and I've taken weeks and weeks of training at the National Fire Academy for mass casualty and mass incident casualty, mass fatality type situations. And it's near and dear to my heart. And Lynn County Emergency Management at this time is now updating their emergency plan for the county. So I thought, well, this is a good time to do it for the city of Marion. Let's update our emergency plan. So here I am asking for your help. So, can a disaster happen here? We all know it can. It's happened other places. Now, that's the bad part about being a fire chief. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know, why is the fire chief always in front of the council putting out the worst scenario and all these terrible things are going to happen? Well, when it does happen, who gets blamed? The fire chief, if they don't do what they're supposed to be doing. So, hence I'm here. Can it happen here? Of course it can happen here. Parkersburg, not far away. That was a major disaster. Joplin, Missouri, not long ago, $3 billion in damages. Marion, Iowa. In my opinion, it's not if, it's when. So a disaster, the state of Iowa has a code, Chapter 29C, that deals with emergency planning and management. And that's kind of what we go by. If you notice what a disaster is, Marion's had every one of those, except the nuclear power plant. We've had an incident at it. There was a fire there a couple years ago, and we even got called to stage for that fire. But all of those have happened here. A catastrophic event, that's just another name for a disaster, but it affects the whole population. And I just don't want to see anything happen to Marion. So we need to plan for it. So you got to figure out, we need to do a risk assessment. How likely are these things to happen? How unlikely? FEMA lists 150 some hazards that could possibly happen to a community. Granted, we won't have a hurricane, but there are other things that can happen. Presently, we are covered for emergency plan by the Iowa State Code. The Iowa State Code requires the county to have an emergency action plan. Our county does. We have a Lynn County Emergency Planning Committee also, which I am a member. And as I said, we're updating all of those plans now. So as you'll see, we have mutual aid agreements, which with all the other fire departments in the county, Lynn County Emergency Management helps us to institute those mutual aid agreements and to keep them current. So the Lynn County has a plan as required by the state. Now, the City of Marion. The plan I found in my office was from 1984, I think it was, or something like that. So it's in much need of updating. With the new FEMA requirements, the Department of Homeland Security requirements pertaining to NIMS, the National Incident Management System, and all of those things, we have to have those kind of things in place for our city in order to receive funding, federal funding for a disaster. So I just want to make sure we have that all in place. OSHA also requires every city to have an emergency plan. So why our own plan? because you're saying, well, Lynn County has all these mutual aid agreements. We're going to have the state USAR team here. We're going to have the federal government here. That takes time. When something happens, we need to act immediately. And in acting immediately, we need to know what we're doing and have a plan. Otherwise, it's chaos. And if you didn't know what chaos means, a firefighter would tell you it means chief has arrived on scene. So we need those contingency plans also. If a disaster does happen, how are we going to handle that? In Joplin, Missouri, their fire department was hit by the tornado. They had an emergency trailer that was set up for mass casualties. It was gone. They found it 10 days later, 2 miles away. So what if our department gets hit? How are we going to respond and help people? So we need to have contingency plans. We also need to know about crisis communication. You all watch the evening news? When there's a disaster in a town, is it all over the news? We will be the headline. Everyone in the world will be watching. How is Marion responding to that disaster? I want us to have a plan in place so that we respond appropriately. No armchair quarterbacking. And the main reason I want a plan is for our resiliency. If we're prepared, we're better to recover. So, I'm asking your permission to set up a committee of staff members to develop a new emergency plan for the city of Marion. Any questions?
What's your time frame?
A year.
Okay.
Basically, what you have right now, I guess the county's got it, and because the eminent one is Duane Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
But there is an evacuation plan for Marion.
Yes, there is.
Where people are to go, and that's in the phone book, I think.
Yes, and that's actually because of the nuclear power plant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's another part of the plan. We need to, there's other parts of it. Do our city employees know what to do? Or their families? Because they're going to need to come into work. So what if their home's hit? Those are the kind of plans we need to put in place. Any other questions?
So are you
Thank
looking
you.
for a
Yes.
person on council to be in that committee as well?
Oh, yeah, I will contact someone. Are you
job.
volunteering?
What-
Good job, Chief.
Also, item number 2, I want to make a correction. There was an error there. This is for a new 2015 Ford F-150. That was the lowest bid. So
Not a pickup, it's a pickup?
it's a pickup, a crew cab
Okay.
pickup. But it's a Ford, not a Chevy, yeah. Lowest bid. It was the lowest.
Go ahead, sir. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just real briefly wanted to review the Waldo's Rock Park REAP application and asking for support from the council for that application. Basically, just want to walk through kind of the conceptual plan with the council. To start with, we have at-grade asphalt Park Road that comes in off of Partners to the top, comes down to what will be an at-grade 20-stall asphalt parking lot. From the parking lot, we will have aggregate trails. They will all be 10-foot wide. They'll be multi-purpose. Right here, we have a proposed pavilion, basically timber frame pavilion, loop trail all the way around the pond.
and then also a trailhead connector here to the Grantwood Trail system as part of the project. And then kind of the key or the nucleus of the park is the large boulder here that is sitting right inside of the retention basin. We will backfill to support and stabilize that erratic with fill and riprap. That will also double as a fishing pier, and we'll have a trail that comes down off of the slope and gets you to this area. Along with that, we will raise the outflow of the retention basin over here, and we will also excavate on the deeper end of the retention. Because it is still a retention pond, we've got to keep that capacity for stormwater runoff. So if we deepen it and also raise the elevation, we should be able to support aquatic life and also develop fish habitat and make it something that can be used for recreational purposes instead of just a retention pond as part of the project. I did provide the council with kind of a breakdown of the estimated cost. First of all, I also put on there what the REAP grant, what REAP actually stands for, and that's Resource Enhancement and Protection. And then I also put on there projects that score well with REAP grant applications, that if it's a park development, if it has multi-purpose trails, if it has those trail connections, park shelters, fishing access, which we will be providing, and then also habitat restoration. The habitat restoration is that we'll do prairie grass and wildflowers around the perimeter of the pond area, back up to about this area of the parking lot, and then this area through here would just be turf grass. So that provides us with that habitat feature also. So when you break it all down, and I won't walk through every one of those costs with the council, but when you break it all down, the total project cost comes to that $239,844 is the estimate that I put on it. The REAP grant request is for that $150,000, and then we would have city funds to cover that balance of that little over $89,000 as part of the project. The REAP grant will be reviewed at the county level by the local review committee on August 4th, and then it goes off to the state for review August 14th, and we should get notification one way or the other sometime mid-September where we're at with the application process. So I think it's a great project. I think it's a great opportunity, and I think we will score well with the grant. So looking for council support and can answer any questions if council has any.
No swimming, right?
What's?
No swimming?
No swimming.
Mike, if you happen to be on Partners Avenue out there that shows on your map, I had asked engineering and they were really helpful. There's 2 stakes there that indicate where that roadway is going to be, so people kind of know how they'll get back there. Rock was quite visible from 62nd until the grass grew up, and you can still see the top of it. But in that wild area up on the top of the lake there, when we pulled out of there, there were pheasants flying, and deer are back there. Right? We have that building on 62nd. There's a lot of wildlife back there, so it should be something pretty special, I think. I'm really happy it's going forward, and the Lost Fund also contributed, so that helps us greatly.
And with that total amount for the project too, one thing that I do want to let the council know is that a lot of the grading of the trails, that type of stuff, we'll probably be able to do that in-house with our own parks operations staff, which will probably lower our overall cost for the project. The pavilion that is proposed, we will probably do that construction in-house with our crews also. When we get into contract work, that will be more associated with the park road, the parking lot, and pond work.
So does that The 240,000, does that include building the road?
Yep, that includes grading out the road, and when you're building out that at-grade asphalt, that cross-section, it comes in less expensive than if you were doing a full build-out of like a regular street.
Instead of a large rock or boulder, could you refer to this as a doney, please? Because that is the geological term for that size thing
Right.
that's,
Technically, they call it a glacial erratic.
it's a doney.
And I'll defer to Dwight Hogan if we get into debate over what we should call the rock, because he's the expert.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
You bet. Yeah. Small little rock.
Don't want to call it a rock.
Glacial boulder. Is that okay?
No.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Neil with the Building Department. I'm assuming you remember we talked about the two houses that were purchased on 29th Avenue for that roundabout construction. And there had been some discussion. Initially, we had put it up for bid and we hadn't received any bids, and then I put it out to contractors. And then I had a gentleman who bid to purchase and move one of the houses. And so he submitted a site plan and kind of exterior elevations of that. I don't know if you have copies of those or you want me to put them on the screen here. And he's here today too if we have any questions for him. Ken Spence is his name. Basically, at this point, the project is not going to start this year. It's going to be initiated in April of next year. So my initial, or the department's initial recommendation to just do the demo has changed somewhat because we have more time and we're not pushed for trying to get into this construction cycle. So the building department would suggest that we go ahead and sell the one house, which he submitted site plan and information about a lot that he's discussed purchasing on 22nd Street and about 3rd Avenue, and going ahead with that, and then just do demolition on the other two properties, the one on 29th and the one on 6th Avenue that we've had for quite a while that's just sitting vacant. It's becoming a maintenance issue at this point.
Now, that property on 6th Avenue, is that one of the brick houses that are historic?
That's the white one.
I know, the
it's
Batchelder house.
to the east of 15th Street.
Yeah. Is that one of the brick houses that are considered historic?
It is on the survey of brick houses, yes.
Have we had any interest at all for a second bid on any of the houses? Anyone?
I've had some people call in about it. It's been difficult because typically we set these up for bids and we set a deadline and we want to get them taken care of. So I was a little bit hesitant to take an offer after the fact when we'd already, kind of closed up that part of that option. But then, for the cost factor, that was another issue. But most of the contacts I've had have been people who are citizens either of this city or another, who are not contractors, who are not, they have no idea what they're going to get into on this kind of a project. Everybody thinks you can just pick that house up and move it. And it doesn't work that way because, first of all, you got to take, the foundation apart in order to get underneath it and lift it up. And then when you find a place to put it, you have to have a foundation, you have to have a lot to go on. The house has to meet current building codes when it's moved because it becomes a new structure on a new site. So electrical and plumbing and mechanical and any of the other code-related issues need to be addressed and updated to the current code at that time. So it's more expensive, I think, than most people realize, which is why we had a previous bid from a contractor, and he rescinded because he said he just couldn't make it work. But it's a council decision. If you'd like to put it up for bids again, we can certainly go through that. But I think we're looking at, maybe 4 or 5 months before we get into a season where we're not going to have any construction going on, and things are going to sit stagnant. If it doesn't get done before that time, it's going to be a hindrance to the project again.
So he's just going to take one of the houses and move. I think originally he was going to do both.
Yeah, originally, and I haven't talked to Ken about this, but originally he was going to move both, but he's only submitted a plan for one of the houses. And it's the one that is actually 3501. 29th is the one that he's looking at. I think he had some difficulty finding a second lot, maybe, and oh, you did? Okay, well, this is the information I have at this time. I guess we'll put it that way.
So that's the house on the east side of 29th Avenue.
Southeast corner.
Yep.
Southeast corner.
Reverend Miller's house.
That?
Reverend Miller's house.
Yes.
So,
So is it going to be made, the second house is going to be made available to Mr. Spence?
well, like I said, this is what I have is just for this one house, and I haven't received anything else at this point. I was hoping that we could get a decision made, but if the council would like to, give him that option to come up with another site plan, and we might as well open up for bids for everybody else too at that point, I guess. If we're
I'd
gonna make
rather
it
see
fair.
the bids opened and somebody pick up on it because the cost of demolition being what it is, I'd rather see somebody take it and have them worry about it rather than the city.
Well, ultimately, we're responsible. We own the lots, and whatever doesn't happen, if somebody buys it and doesn't complete it, then we're responsible for taking care of what's left. So we're still going to be, we still may expend money to take out a foundation to regrade the lot, to disconnect the sewer and the water and utilities. And it's just saying we take a certain amount of risk with that. But and initially, it was advertised and I had no offers. So I don't think it's. There again, this is my own opinion, so that's the council that can make this decision and how they want to proceed.
Did you
Could
want
we
to try to
open
get the
it back up?
demolition?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Did you want to try to get the demolition done this year?
Well, I think for engineering's, for the sake of their project, I don't know when they want to let bids, but it was discussed in April. So that's fairly early in the spring. So the sooner we get this started and the sooner we get the lots prepared for the street construction that's going to take place in the spring, the better. If we wait too long, we're going to miss that window, and I just don't want to delay it for that purpose, I guess.
Could we open it up?
It's not our intent to wait till spring, so unless something changes.
Well, you said it was going to start in the spring. You said April was when it was supposed to
It could
start.
start as late as that, but we're getting inclinations that it may yet go this fall.
Oh, really? Oh, I wasn't informed of that.
Since we have, an interest in one of the homes, could we vote on one of the homes and then open the bids back up for the one on the southwest corner?
I believe Mr. Spence has got both of them.
Well, but
You have
he didn't
copies
have a
of them,
place
don't
to
you,
put the second one, though.
No.
Okay.
I guess,
Do you have something, comments?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Council.
Give your name.
My name is Ken Spence, resident of Marion, 1020 17th Street. The second lot was unusual, and that's why a site plan wasn't submitted to the building department. The reason being, it had to be at least 80 feet wide by 120, where most of your lots are 60 or less, and that was sufficient for one of the homes. The second home, the second lot, is owned by Alliant, and it became literally just available today. So got listed, and we're proceeding to get a purchase agreement and do the relevant submission of site plan that we've submitted for the first home. So yes, as I expressed the last time I was here, that we are interested in both homes. We will take both homes if the city allows us to purchase and proceed, which would significantly take that burden of getting rid of and demolishing the home.
so you would take both homes?
I would take both, but as I said, because of the size of the lot, it was hard to find. One just became available today that would fit for the second home. So we are taking both homes on 29th Avenue.
I'd be in favor of separating the sixth house out of this altogether and
Yeah, that's
going
what
with
I'm-
the two.
Yeah.
further like to have the Historical Society look at 1543 6th Avenue before we tear that down.
Does the city need a deadline, though, for him to take ownership?
Well, that's one of the things, that's one of the things we require would be to have a completion date. Initially, excuse me, trying to find it in my notes here. Initially, the completion date was to be September 30th of this year. Obviously, we're almost into August now, so we're pushing it a little bit. But there again, I'm not aware of what engineering, what their project plan is. I guess at this point, I thought it had been pushed back, and that may, I guess, is going to be a critical factor in this because we want to get the houses moved out of the neighborhood before they begin construction. It's going to be a hindrance. Work on the site can probably take place while the road is going on, but the houses need to be gone. Am I correct?
No, they don't need to be for the project.
Oh.
But to move them out of there, they may, to get around the roundabout, depending which way they're going.
I think they'll probably, my opinion is they'll be pulled out on the 35th Street and taken south, so I don't know that would have involved the roundabout at all.
24th and 31st Street is where one of them is going.
Okay.
That's probably 29th and down 31st Street.
Yeah, we'll have to look at, you got overhead wires and trees and everything.
There isn't any overhead wires on 29th.
No, but if he goes down one of the other streets, he
Well,
may have
down
to go
31st
go down
there is.
35th and across.
Yeah,
We
35th,
use the
31st there
professional
are.
moving company. That's all they do.
Yeah. I think they're street lights, though. It's not big wire. It is farther down, but.
As a stopgap.
Yeah, well, like I said, those would be issues for the mover to work out, raising power lines or moving street lights or moving whatever they need to move. To
Don't
get
cut
around
my power when
Okay, so
when it's 20 below.
we can separate this out, give him a shot of these two houses, separate the
If
other
you'd like
one,
to, we
and then
can
have the other one for review.
We
Can
can
we do that?
rewrite it to accept the purchase offer for the two properties on 29th Avenue
Fine.
for $500 each.
Fine.
By Ken Spence, and then separate the other one out.
Thank you.
All right.
Great.
That's what we'll have ready for you. Thank you, sir.
Engineering.
Start down on items 6 and 7. They go together under engineering, which is the public hearing and award of bids for the 35th Street, 29th Avenue intersection improvement project, which includes the mini roundabout at that location. The City of Marion did receive 3 bids on the 14th of July. A low bid was from Eastern Iowa Excavating and Concrete for $255,366. This was a little over 13% over estimate. However, we would still recommend the award of this. We have concurrence from the DOT on their funding and on the bid as being competitive and marketable. So,
Based on your response to my email there, would the contractor be willing to? You said he was already talking fall.
yeah, they've already asked for a pre-construction meeting on Monday. So they're hoping to be in and out of there fairly quickly. So I don't know if that will happen or not, as far as whether once they have the pre-con, whether they'll move ahead or not. We've worked with Linmar as far as scheduling for school in the fall. We've talked to the contractor as far as his ability to do the work, and he's ready to go. So we can try to encourage him to go to next year, but I really doubt that he will at this point.
Did y'all get the email I said about moving it till May? That's what I recommended, but you said that the DOT is already, you would have to redo the whole thing?
Yeah, we would have to start over, and we may lose the DOT funding.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Considering.
Yes.
Considering what the requirements of the DOT are on so many of these projects, I don't know why we keep applying for DOT funding.
Yeah.
I can see all kinds of requirements, and so that you're literally spending what you receive from them on nickel and dime projects that have to be done.
We try to stay away from the projects that are
Well, I'm
lower
referring to
portions of
7th and
funding.
7th and all the fall-de-roll that took place with that.
We try to stay away from the ones that are lower percentages. I mean, if we get into a 25% DOT funding or a 30%, 40%, we would not apply for those types of projects. In this case, we look at each case-by-case project and decide whether the federal and state dollars are worth going after or not.
The main reason I sent that was for the buses. I mean, that's a parade of buses there in the morning and evening.
Yeah, and Rick's here, and we've talked to him about it.
Okay.
They have a lot of alternatives out through there, and we've talked to him about that. And we're seeing a steady increase in costs of projects. I think delaying any project is going to cost us more money in the long run.
You're talking 113% over your estimate?
We're 13% over the estimate.
Yeah. Yes, I said that wrong.
It was in the journal or in the paper the other day. 100. I thought, no, that's not right. So.
Well, then what you're saying is this would preclude Mr. Spence being able to obtain those houses, right?
Not at all. We didn't. In my opinion, no. I think that normally they move those houses. What I've seen, they move them lengthwise. They'll take them off the site lengthwise, which will mean they'll have to come out on 35th Street first. And then they have the opportunity to go south to 28th or to 26th or whatever. They have to look at the routes as an individual location of where they're going and where they're coming from, because they'll have to have lines lowered and removed. They'll have to have overhead trees trimmed. There's a lot of that going on. I've seen a lot of it over the years. I do not feel that it will preclude him from being able to do that.
I still think a four-way stop would have been the easiest, most expedient way to take care of the problem.
Here. You have somebody with a question back there. Over here. We have one question for the audience, sir. Sir? Just for one question.
Okay.
No, come to the.
Okay.
I don't want to delay this.
You can all hear me without this, but that's okay. My name is Charlie Knutson. I live at 2835 24th Avenue, Marion. I've been trying to get information on this project for the last 9 months. Council received a letter from me, which you've accepted. I still don't have any response back on this project, and I really, as a citizen, be upset that you move forward on this without responding to some questions from a citizen. The other thing is, how in the heck can this council or this city ignore the fact that you spent $510,000 on 2 houses and not include that as part of this project cost? 2 stop signs is really cheap. I really think you should try that before you move forward with anything else. If it doesn't work, then yeah, we do something else. But 2 stop signs, we do it around a lot of other places in this town, and it sure does work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You may continue.
If anybody has any questions, we're recommending that we award the project and move forward with the construction. Okay?
Very well.
Okay, item number 8 is a request from Todd Fraser, CCE Limited. He does a lot of the development out at Country Club Estates, which is north of Tower Terrace Road, east and west of Irish Drive, the new Irish Drive. He is requesting a deferral of fees having to do with a lot that he purchased, an existing lot east of his development. Irish Drive is here, Tower Terrace is to the south, Shady Oak is existing over here. There's a lot at that location right here that he has purchased to move his detention basin from this location to this location. He's notified and talked with each of the residences. They all seem to be okay with this. It would stay as a green space even after the basin is built.
He is asking a deferral of the stormwater and sanitary sewer fees associated with this property. Staff has looked at it. We would agree to the fact that there will probably never be sewered, so we would be okay with the deferral of the sanitary sewer fees. However, when somebody issues and submits a final plat, that individual pays stormwater fees for the right-of-ways, for all the green spaces, for everything in that plat. So we don't feel that it would be appropriate in this case to defer those stormwater fees for this situation as well. So that's our recommendation. Questions?
So on your original plat picture, where is that? Where is that spot?
This spot here is this spot here.
Okay.
So,
and he wanted it up on lot 13?
well, originally when he submitted a plat, the basin was right in here, but he was able to buy this lot and push that over, which then gives him more room for lots, for houses.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's a great idea. We worked with him as far as moving forward with it and approving it prior to council seeing it, or not approving it, but you know what I mean. Working with him to get through the process. So.
The lighter area, is that a low area there?
Here?
No, over to the left.
No, actually, this is all farmed, was farmed. Originally, this from about here, this way, fell into Shady Creek, or into Shady Lane. Now they've regraded all this, so everything from about here, this way, falls back this direction. So he's reduced that stormwater going on to Shady Lane by better than 50 to 60%.
Okay, so that's not all, it's not all going into the...
No, not at all.
Okay.
Now, if you drove out there today, a lot of those streets are ready to be poured or already in, and now that all goes to the west.
Okay.
This is Shady Lane. Yep, Shady Oak Drive, excuse me, Shady Oak Drive. The next item is development agreement with Robson Homes, number 9, having to do with the 29th Avenue widening project. This is 29th Avenue. This is the easement that he will be providing right away. This is Butterfield Park over here. Winchester Drive now goes south right here. He's proposing that within his plat that he provide this right-of-way for Sherwood Drive and Winchester and actually make this connection into his development to the north. In doing that, he's platting over to us the extra right-of-way needed. 29th was originally 66 feet, and we need 80 total, so he's, as part of his platting, providing us with that additional right-of-way to allow us to build trail and so forth with the 29th Avenue widening project. So within that, we would work with Prestwick, who is building the 29th Avenue widening. If you've been out there recently, they're grading and get ready to put in storm sewer. He would build that, we would reimburse him for that, and then we would provide for access fees to be charged against these adjacent properties as they develop and are final platted.
So the road that connects there by Butterfield won't be as wide as 29th Avenue is now. It will be slightly smaller.
29th Avenue itself will be narrower, yes.
Yeah, so it's what, 70? How wide is it?
It's 50 foot back to back at Butterfield Park. And east of Butterfield, we will remove the parking on the north side.
Okay.
And we'll be going down to a 3-lane cross-section with bike trails.
Yeah. But it won't be you won't have to do the jog anymore.
No, you will not. The only thing that will be left is out at Morrissey's, which is on the east end, which will not be done, but east of 44th.
And will that Shorewood hook up to a street over there?
Yes, there is. I didn't bring that with me, but there is current development that's going in right here. The street's being paved. That will go back up into that.
Go up to one of those cul-de-sacs
Yes.
or up in there? Okay.
Yeah, and eventually go over to the big assisted living on 35th Street.
Good. That's a way around the roundabout.
It is, exactly. And it gives us that neighborhood connectivity that Tom's always looking for.
Yeah.
So.
Next item is item 10, which is a request for one parking lot, residential parking spot located at 975 6th Street. The current property owner lives at this house at the corner of 6th Street and, what is it, 10th Avenue. This is Apple Kids Daycare. It used to be the junior high. She has difficulty with this business parking. Their employees park out in this area around her house, and she's constantly jockeying for parking spots. However, the business is required to provide that on-site parking. We think that they do an adequate job of that. They don't regulate their employees very well, but I'm not sure that the city's responsibility to create a assigned spot, I'm not sure how we would even regulate that. So we're recommending that we would not approve this request.
There's such a thing as a residential parking place?
No, we don't have one. Next item is item 11, which
Dan,
is a
on that,
request.
if you move the parking back from 10th Street farther, would that prevent them from parking there, you think?
Would also prevent her from parking there.
Well, but I mean, yeah, but
She does have a driveway here that she could park in.
what I'm wondering, if you let her park right in there, if you moved it, no parking up to there or something?
There's just no way to regulate her being able to park there and somebody else not. It's public right of way. I just don't know how we would do that.
It was just a thought that would prevent them from using it, maybe. Anyway, keep going.
Also, all these items, all these TAC items, all these people have been notified that we will be discussing these on Thursday, so they'll be on the agenda for them to comment on, and if they'd like to be here for that. Next item is item 11, which is a no parking zone on one side of 2nd Avenue. She wasn't really specific about the location, but we would probably agree that if we're going to do no parking on one side, we would do it from the school, Francis Marion, over to 27, one side or the other. All we're recommending at this time is that we notify all the adjacent potentially impacted residents, and then we would take public input at a future meeting. So that's all we're doing at this point.
Oh, I don't think it was really the residents that had the problem. It was the parents that were dropping their kids off and waiting for them, and all. I think that's where the problem came in. So.
Well, and the adjacent owners will have to make that decision whether they want to give up that parking or not, because we can't go out and tell them to not park there. We have that all around all the schools. The parents come in and park in the residential areas in front of the homes. It does create difficulty for those owners, those adjacent owners. But unless you do some kind of 30-minute parking or something, but that just inconveniences the owners as much. So we'll leave it up to the owners, or you will leave it up to the owners and their input on whether they want us to proceed or not.
But the one side, no parking, that's been common throughout the city.
Absolutely, and we agree with that. We see benefit in doing it in all locations, just for EMS and for garbage and so forth. But it's which side do you do it on? And if people are willing, if you give up parking on one side, then you're going to have twice as many cars on the other side. So it's a decision that I think the neighborhood should make, not us, but totally up to council.
Well, I thought it usually was how many driveways there are.
We look at driveways, and we look at mailboxes, and we look at just visibility, intersections. There's a lot of things we look at. When it becomes to a side decision, that would be between staff and council, but whether they want to proceed with no parking one side, I think should be at least partially a residential request. Next item is item 12, which is a parking space on 13th Street for the property located at 1308 8th Avenue. location is 8th Avenue, which is here. 13th Street is here, which we just finished reconstructing partially. This is Farmer State Bank. This home at 1308 is a business on the main level. Currently, 8th Avenue is no parking both sides. 13th Street is no parking on the east side. Currently have no parking back from the corner back to approximately 116 feet, I think it is, to here, 125 feet. The business, which is zoned 01, is required by code to provide on-site parking, which they kind of do. They have kind of 4 stalls here. He wasn't specific about where he was asking for parking at. We would not recommend at all to provide parking on the east side of 13th Street, given that it's no parking the entire length. One of the recommendations we would look as an alternative is to reduce this distance back from the corner of no parking from about 125 feet back to about 80 feet. In doing that, we would still allow for traffic to be able to come in, pull over, and safely wait at the intersection. If this is okay with him, and if he comes Thursday and comments on that, or I will give him a call as well if we don't hear, TAC would recommend that we make that change. The recommendation would not be to allow parking on the east side of 13th Street. It would just be hazardous.
Don't they have parking over further to the east?
Not on 8th Avenue, no.
No, we keep going, keep sliding it over.
This way?
Yeah, see where those cars, right?
Is that their parking?
All you see is the very front end of the cars there.
These two, is this their stall here? This is
No,
their...
right there, to the right, to your right there. Isn't that a parking lot right there?
Oh, yeah, there's a stall there. Or there's a parking lot there.
There's
I'm
a
not sure
whole
if that's
lot
theirs
right
or
there, because I've parked there before.
Oh, that's the banks. Okay.
So, I mean, isn't that theirs as well? Huh?
It's the banks.
That's the banks? The bank is clear.
I know that that's where their employees park.
I see.
Looks like at minimum there's something going on here. But
Right.
Yeah, but they,
do you know, Tom?
That's our lot.
Dave in the back has got
park.
something, Dan.
What's that?
Dave back here in the back.
They got the easement from Farmer State Bank to go to the parking lot there.
Dave? Dave, can you come to the mic, please?
Is that this location here, Dave?
They've got an easement from Farmer State Bank parking lot over here to go through the parking lot, and Farmer State lost a stall or two. They come in here, they got about 6 additional stalls in addition to the 3 to 4 they have up front. So they have probably 8 to 9 total unmarked stalls there, off-site. So
I just thought that was their parking lot there, because we parked in it before.
I guess the question comes down to whether this council perceived the need for additional parking on street for a business that's supposed to provide parking on site.
How wide is that street then? It isn't a real wide street.
13th? I think it's probably 27.
You didn't widen it when they redid it, did they?
What's that?
You didn't widen it when you redid it, did you?
No, we did not.
Joe, you need to pull your mic closer, please.
It's what?
Pull your mic closer or talk louder like me.
Oh, me?
Yes, you.
Oh,
Thank you.
I got a big mouth. I figured you could hear me.
No, that's where they're
So all these TAC items will come to you on Thursday in the affirmative. Just keep in mind that not all our recommendations are in the affirmative. So.
Where those cars are parked that you were talking about, Joe, there was a house there that was taken down when Farmer State Bank built, and that's when they put their employee parking there. But there was a house there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I just thought that was the business is there parking. I didn't realize that was Farmer State.
No, but it sounds like they have added some back in here, and this looks fairly new.
Yeah. So how many parking, you said you'd give them, 80 feet from the corner? How many would that go them?
3.
3.
possibly 4 if they really pushed it.
Well, farther down than on 12th Street, no, 13th Street, there's parking on one or the other side?
I think there is. That's next to the church.
I don't think in that block there is. I thought it was the next block is where they.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I can find out if you'd like me to.
Because just to be consistent, so it's not one of these in and out type things.
Why do we have no parking on the east side of that street?
Just because the policy is to keep no parking on one side in those areas so that for EMS and garbage pickup and mail delivery.
So that whole street on the east side is no parking?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure even the block south is that way, and I'm positive that the block north is as well. We vary from neighborhood to neighborhood, but in this
So
case,
the street south is both sides of the street, across from the church, isn't it?
no, there's no parking on the east side. I didn't bring it with me. I apologize for that.
Wait a minute.
Dan, there is parking on the east side, south of that, but the street's also quite a bit wider.
Oh, it goes
I'm looking
to that,
at it on
goes to
Google
that.
Maps now.
Yeah.
All right.
Commercial width.
All right, that's fine. But my question was no parking on that, and it's no parking all the way. So there.
We would,
yeah.
if we went to parking on this side as well.
Yeah.
You've got driveways all along here with the bank. It would be pretty difficult if you allowed parking on both sides. Where from here north we have parking on the west side, where there isn't driveways.
For the drive-through.
And you're going to move to number 13 next?
Yes. Number 13 is no parking on 3rd Avenue. We are also can see the benefit as far as TAC is concerned, as far as adding. We currently have no parking on the north side of this curve back through here. We would also notify the residents and recommend that we continue to have no parking also on this side. There's no parking at this driveway, but this all becomes very difficult to get through here when the parents are sitting there parking waiting for the kids. So we would recommend that we take no parking both sides all the way back to the school. Bad glare.
You can't see anything.
Is that better?
You said you'd take it back to the school, as in the school property or the school driveway?
Their request is back to 2301, which is where we would, I think, is like right here. It's the next off this picture. No, it'd be on
And
this side.
the reason that I ask is, to me, if we're going to take it from there, I would be in favor of taking it all the way to the driveway, because you're still going to bottleneck right in that same spot.
To this driveway?
To the school driveway.
Yeah, there's several driveways.
Well, the actual access into their parking lot, which is further east.
Farther east?
Yeah.
Well, the main concern for us is the curve areas create some of the congestion and the difficulty. Once you get out of the curves, we wouldn't see really the need, but we can do that if that's what council would like us to do.
My biggest concern, other than the curves, is the width of that street. It's incredibly narrow, and with the parking there.
Yeah, this street's 25 foot wide. We'll notify all the residents. We'll go ahead and notify them farther down, and then the council can make that decision at the time when that comes back before you.
And this is kind of a side note, and I know we've talked about this before, and I just bring it up tonight because we've had parking at 2 schools brought up here. Have we looked again at working with the schools? I know we have a little bit, but kind of a comprehensive citywide policy on around schools, the parking situations, or do we have to do those one by one? It seems like these just keep coming back to us.
No, we have not. I think there's been a lot of conversations over the years on those. We kind of deal with them on a one-by-one basis because of, it seems like the concerns change over the years. As far as visibility, we kind of try to keep the intersections clear, like we did up on 50th Street just recently at Casino. I don't know that there's a good way to do that, because you really can't keep everybody happy. The parents are trying to get in to pick the kids up. The school is trying to allow that. They're not willing and able to provide off-street parking for all those cars. And we kind of deal with that problem for 20 minutes to 30 minutes in the morning and 20 to 30 minutes in the afternoon.
One thing that we've done in the last couple of years, I know it wasn't extremely popular, was we required that new schools be run through a process for a conditional use permit. And that provides an opportunity for us to evaluate that process, the pickup, the drop-off, the bus locations, the parking numbers, and ask the questions that should be asked at the time. So that is a new process. I think we've been through,
and I think
maybe one or two schools now with that process.
And I think even in that case, the school's doing a great job of trying to provide the separation of schools, adults, and buses.
Yeah.
But even then, the parents want to park on the street, whether it's a block away or 2 blocks away, and allow the kids to come to them instead of coming into that crowd. So I'm not sure there's a solution to it, even when the school tries.
On 3rd Avenue, the parking was on the north side, and a parent came in and said, if you put it on the no parking on the south side, then when we pull up, the little kids don't have to run across the street. And that's why that no parking is on the south side, up to 27th Street, I believe. And then it goes back to the north side.
Well, this section here, the no parking is on the north side. But
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that continues all the way east.
But it was a safety issue as far as the kids were concerned.
So the first couple of these items will come back to you on Thursday. The rest of them will go out for notification for a future meeting. Thank you.
Your Honor, may I make a comment about that, what Dan just talked about? Because I live on 2nd Avenue and I took a couple of these complaints. The main problem is, and for your information, he's talking about the same school, not 2 different schools, Councilman Crawford. But I would say 99...
Who are you?
Kay Lammers, 2820 2nd Avenue in Marion.
Thank you.
For everybody's information, the problem isn't the school. It's having no neighborhood schools anymore. So either these kids are coming from heaven knows where, talk about a disconnect. You're not going to school with your neighbors anymore. You're going to school with the whole town. So unless you want to pay quite a bit to have your child picked up by bus, that's what's creating the problem. And you're not going to solve it unless a cop sits there every day, because I was taking Mary Lou to therapy, and we finally decided the heck with trying to get down 3rd Avenue, so we went down 4th Avenue to get her home and came back, because nobody wants to yield at all. And when there's snow, the people park almost in the middle of the street, so you couldn't squeeze through there if you wanted to. So thank goodness this is your problem, but the problem is caused by not having neighborhood schools anymore, so nobody walks. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning and zoning, sir.
Minutes, 5 minutes.
Well, you have 15, I think.
Perfect.
And you've lost 8.
A little quicker if I don't have my agenda. Well, the first item there is a payment to the Metropolitan Planning Organization for $13,500. That's part of the CMPO, being a part of the CMPO that we get a lot of our federal funds through. If there's any questions on that, there's a good article on that, but we pay that every year. It's based on population. The next items are approving the waiver of subdivision regs and allowing for the recording of an acquisition plat, and then also approving temporary construction easements related to Genesis Equity property, formerly Marion Iron. And this is all just kind of, this is all part of the Central Corridor project. So So I'm just going to, you guys had the acquisition plats, and they were probably very difficult to kind of fit together. So really, in this map here, you got 7th Avenue, 6th Avenue corridor, or formerly the railroad. Marion Iron, as you can see, is kind of underneath this illustration. The roundabout will go here. The pinkish area is the acquisition plat. So this property is being dedicated to the city as right-of-way as a part of this, as a part of the action of recording that. So it's a subdivision of the property, dedication of that to the city. This is all as a part of the development agreement we had for the construction of the road with Genesis Equity. And then also there's temporary construction easements within here that we're acquiring based on the plan of improvements for the project from 26th to 31st Street. So this is all consistent with the development agreement. The plans, I believe we got the final plans back for this portion of the project. They're under review at this point. And so this is just moving the project forward incrementally. Any questions on that?
What kind of a timeline are we looking at for the project right now?
Defer to Dan on that.
We actually met with Abode Construction today, who is partially the developer and partially the contractor. They'd like to move forward with contracting the sanitary sewer work associated with this section. You'll probably see something at the next meeting in front of you for possible approval for those contracted items within the construction plans that would allow them to start as soon as possible.
And what part of the road are we talking about there?
They're going to start with sanitary sewer up to the roundabout. We'll get that taken care of. It's probably all you're going to see this year. We
From
could
the east or the
possibly
west?
see some of the roundabout, but
From the east or the west?
from the west.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
So what are you still looking at for 31st Street up there? Is that still traffic signals?
Yeah, there's that intersection's not being touched by the project. Unless, well, the west leg of it would be with some turn lanes and such, but
Well, we're doing a little bit of hardware modifications up there, but other than that, no. Crossings, we're adding a crossing, I think, on the south leg.
So where does this leave for development then? Is there development on both in the areas in between the roads then?
correct. There would be development opportunities in this area, and then this is all owned by Genesis Equity as well. So all the way around the project.
There's a hash marks east on a street east of Salvation Army. Is that what that is? Right there. Yes, sir.
This is a proposed. It's not really. I'm just using this as an
Yes.
exhibit, but they're proposing that be vacated.
Uh-huh.
That's not up really for consideration at this point, but that's kind of where we'll probably be looking at that as an option in the future as well. There's a public hearing process for that. And
I had asked originally when we did this about having a wider, if I'm westbound on 7th Avenue and want to stay on 7th Avenue westbound, if we widen that there, I wouldn't have to zig so much to do that. You know, I'm going to have to go into the roundabout to go straight westbound, where if we could go straight across there, it would save a lot of traffic in the roundabout itself. We add 2 to 4 new conflict points when you do that. So
Pardon me?
you add 2 to 4 new conflict points when you do that. That's why we have not recommended. Tell me what a conflict point is. If you have a regular intersection, a four-way stop, you have about 32 conflict points. I think in a roundabout it's 8. That's where cars have the potential of hitting each other. When you do that, you vary a lane width, people will tend to wander around that lane width or separate from one lane to the next. That creates conflict points where they have to re-enter that lane to get back with the flow of traffic. Well, it's clear as mud, but when you a two-lane road versus a four-lane road, a four-lane road can carry a lot more traffic, but it has a lot more potential for accidents because it has more conflict points because you have people going from lane to lane. That'd be the same situation here. Right. Well,
We can talk about it, Paul.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, but
Yeah.
you'll have to show me.
Okay. We did look at it, consider, we have lanes, you look at the Mount Vernon roundabout, they call them slip lanes. I think that's part of the problem with that roundabout is the slip lanes that they've added to that. I'm not in favor of doing that because I think it creates more confusion.
Okay.
But we can look at it.
Any other questions?
So what's going to come Thursday then? Or will there be action Thursday?
The resolutions that are on the agenda for approval of their acquisition plats and temporary construction easements.
So that's number 3.
Yeah, 3A through D.
The city will be accepting one parcel, which is the red on there, and then I think 3 construction easements.
Yeah.
That's going to allow us to build this phase of the Central Corridor.
Being owned by the development partner, this is just one more step in getting the process in place. We'll also be talking with GLD about getting an acquisition plat for their property, the construction easements. I'll tell you about, well, I can just talk to you about it now. The council directed us to proceed with a request for proposals for right-of-way acquisition services. That is complete. It's going to be sent out on Friday. I'm hoping to get things back by the end of this month, so we'll have someone in here working on the acquisition of the appropriate parcels throughout the corridor over the next year. You guys will be approving that contract, which will include an hourly wage for the acquisition process. So,
this is a full-size roundabout then?
Yeah.
Similar to what's on 35th Street?
Yeah, excuse me, this one and the one at 7th and 7th and the one at 35th and Tower Terrace are all similar size.
Yeah, okay.
On to C.
That's all that was really started under my agenda, but I did have a couple things that I wanted to brief the council on. If you have a couple minutes. One, this is a property within the corridor, and since we do not have a contract currently with right-of-way acquisition agent, and in addition to that, this property is actually on the MLS, we've proceeded with entering into an agreement to purchase this property. This is the, let's see, 17th Street, 6th Ave, 16th Street. It's RJ Construction. The building sits at an angle. And all we've done at this point is tied the property up. We didn't even put a price on it. What we're really trying to do is to continue with an appraisal process to get actual value of the property and then negotiate a purchase of it. We would need this project, our property for the project. As you can see, the Central Corridor or 6th Ave would go right over the edge of the building. This is the sidewalk. The new right-of-way line would be right about in here, so it'll go through the building. The owners of that property are actually moving out, so it's the business is, I think, moving to the owner's home. So,
you said this is on the MLS?
Yes, yeah.
it's
So
not
this
relocation
is
or-
a straight. This is not relocation. This is a straight purchase. So, if they agree to that acquisition, so. So we move before that, you'll hear more about that. We would need to acquire it anyway, so this just makes it a little bit easier. Any questions? I just want to make sure that the council's aware that we're moving forward with this. While we're entering in an agreement, that doesn't mean anything's getting purchased. Any purchase price or any of the associated studies that get done with that would come through the council, just like every other property purchase we've done. The council approves it. Staff doesn't do it prior to council doing that.
What street is?
This is 6th. This is 16th. This is 17th.
Okay.
Yeah, Marion Brush,
Okay.
south of there. APC Emirates on the south side. This is, I don't even know what the current name of it is. No, the bar.
I know. Yeah.
Was it Dumas's? I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is now, but nonetheless, that's the location. So I just wanted to brief the council and let you know that we're working through this. As you know, if we go through the other process, it usually is more expensive. So it's a good deal. Sorry. And then I did have one other item, not to belabor the issue, but I know the council has been receiving a number of comments and questions regarding Highway 13 and 29th Avenue. A lot of dirt work going on. There's a lot of conversations about what is happening and some, I think, just some rumors going around. I just wanted to kind of highlight what's tentatively planned out there. So this is an illustration showing Highway 13. This is Prairie Ridge Avenue and Prairie Hill Drive. So as you go north on Prairie Hill, it'll at one point hit 29th Avenue someday as it becomes platted. There's been some questions why the city hasn't put that in. As you know, the city doesn't go out and put streets in a new development. It's done by the developer. They have not platted this property, or this property is not platted either. When that plat comes through, they have responsibilities for those portions of right-of-way directly adjacent to the property. So that'll be something that'll come in down the line. The building on the corner, this is all conceptual at this point, but this is what they've been bringing forward as a concept. They're 3-story buildings, commercial on the first floor, and as I understand it, the potential for residential on 2 floors. So they'd be larger buildings, commercial mixed-use building. This is just like what we've been talking about happening. As you can see, they're showing some garages off the south side. From what we've seen in some renderings that are way out of date because they were actually a 2-story building, these have what I would consider pretty good exterior design to them. I don't even want to show the drawings because they're out of date. They're not what they're proposing at this point. But this is conceptual in nature at this point. Platinum Homes. The development further south, this project is moving forward. Site plan's been received. The property is zoned R6. It's been that way for a long, long time. What they're proposing are 4 12-plexes. These would be the similar buildings that what are being constructed on 10th Street. This isn't the greatest rendering of them, but that's essentially what they are. This is if you drive around town, you see a standard 12-plex. It's got this center stairwell you can see in 2 towers with decks in between, just like on 10th Street. It'll be very similar to that. So they are talking about doing some brick or stone on the exterior column areas to kind of.
Whose development is this?
Platinum Homes, and they built the one on 10th Street as well. And then I do want to show, if I can find it, one other illustration. Of course, it's the best one. Along the south side, Prairie Ridge Avenue, they're showing what looked like from the footprint a typical condo that we see in and around Marion. But actually what they've done in this situation is they've done what we've been talking about the developers doing, and that is turning the garages out away from the public right-of-way and putting them on the private side of the development and putting the facades towards the street to make it more walkable, user-friendly for pedestrians and such. So what we're getting is more of like a traditional townhome, or I'd almost call it like a suburban row home towards the street. So when you drive down the street, this is what you're going to see. Front stoop, front door, windows, instead of a garage door. You won't even see a garage door in these. So we're really excited to see these be done. They've been done in Cedar Rapids in a couple areas, down by Newbow on Ellis Boulevard, south of the police station. There's some as well. So this is a new product to the community. You could probably say that they're similar to what's being done out at where Jeff Robson did them, but he did them facing towards each other, and he put the garages towards the street. The difference is when you drive down the public street, you're not going to see the garages, you're going to see the facades, which is what we really want to see.
Those are 5-plexes?
And they're 5-unit buildings.
And the ones behind it, the 4 are 12-plexes?
Correct.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So there's been a lot of conversation about what this is, and so you're looking at, I think there's, rough numbers, I think there are 63 units on the south side over the 4 acres. There's garages for the units within the 12, and there's garages for all units. I'm fairly certain if they're not all of them, there's at least half of them have a garage unit in them. And there is I just showed you basically the plan view of the buildings. There's also a landscape plan as a part of this and such. So anyway, any questions on that? And I'm going to put this on the In the Works page on the website. We're going to do a link out to Facebook so that people that want to hear about it or see about it know about it. And then I've been talking with Paul and Cody about the opportunity because Paul, how many questions did you say you received?
Lots.
Lots of questions about even doing a neighborhood meeting out there, just going out, bringing out the plans, bringing the developer and let them ask questions and such.
Is this Platinum also?
Yes, they own all the property.
I think some of the foundations are even in it at this point.
Yep.
I think.
Could be. I haven't been out there in a while.
The foundations are in, I believe, for these.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you think that's what it is?
So would we need to change on 13?
I'm sorry?
On Highway 13, would we need to change the speed limit out there? Because that's going to be really, really noisy. I mean, it's 65 right there. Is that something we'd need to make a request
Well, I think the
for?
DOT
We've been working with the DOT to try to reduce the speed limit out there. Their last conversation we had, at first they were going to do the reductions we had requested, but they want us to go through a formalized process. So I'll be bringing something to council where council will make a request of the DOT on what we want for speed limits out there and allow them to react to that request.
We'd have a warning light, right? Isn't that where that goes?
It will.
Blinking light or something?
No, that intersection will not be having the advanced warnings.
Okay.
Those are only for Highway 100.
Is it out further than that?
No, it's just at Highway 100.
But that's, it's up to 65 right there.
Yeah.
We're not. Staff and I'm sure council is not appreciative of what's out there now. We're trying to get it lowered at least north of 29th Avenue. So
North of 29th or south?
north of 29th. We had a study done, a TEEP study that provided for some changes in speed limits, and it's just a matter of going through the process now to get the DOT to approve.
So what are you thinking, like 45 or something, or?
We'll look at it, Joe, and see what we need. There'll be a. I don't think it'll go below 50 out there. I don't think they're going to allow us to do that, but we'll extend the 50 farther north and farther south.
Yeah, no, what do you call it, Jake breaks? There's a sign out there for that.
I think, Tom, that'll be very helpful on the web, and we'll have our meeting, and that should answer a lot of questions. These are actually a barrier for the others, right?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
So
there's an extensive landscaping plan to this project as well. Our new
and a lot of
landscaping code
trees.
provides for that to happen, and there is quite a bit of landscaping being identified towards the Highway 13 area on that side to buffer it. So, and one thing I'd point out is, from a city perspective, this property was zoned the R6. The developer bought the ground, so that's why you haven't seen any of this. It's sitting out there, and so anyway, that's their prerogative to build the residential next to Highway 13. So,
Any clue as to what commercial would go underneath, or?
Oh, I'm sure it'll be retail.
A retail?
Retail office, what we typically see. Out there, you might see more of an office blend, but I'm not. It's could be
no gas stations or anything like that.
No, as mixed-use buildings, they've not proposed a gas station there. So.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
All right. The first item under administration is a hearing on the amendment to the urban renewal plan. This is the one to rename the consolidated district and to establish the new boundaries to take it over further west, picked up the areas along Blair's Ferry and Twixtown roads that aren't currently in an urban renewal area in anticipation of some projects occurring out there. We had visited with the school quite a bit about that back when we were looking at the two housing projects, the senior housing projects off of Blair's Ferry Road. So I don't think it came as any surprise that we were going to be moving forward with changing those boundaries. So this will establish new ones. Number 3 is a resolution to set a public hearing on an urban renewal plan amendment. This would be to adopt a new agreement with Capital Commercial for the 1204 project. I had outlined a different way of doing that project for the council at the last meeting. I know that the developer has been visiting with the council and pushing for additional assistance, but absent any direction from the council that we're going to do that, this would be published and move forward at the same amount as the prior agreement, just with a different form. This is the 1204. Made right is 1,000. It's a different one. Number 5 is a partial payment to Genesis Equities for the relocation of Klingler Paint. The company has achieved all the milestones that were set out in that development agreement. They received the first portion of their payment for that, which was $250,000, and this is the fulfillment of that agreement for that full relocation. Klingler has moved and has occupied the new facility, and they're done. As part of that agreement, much like we just saw with the Marion Iron relocation, we will get the right-of-way that we need for the 6th Avenue project, and then the developer will retain the remaining portion of that property for a future redevelopment project. Then number 6 is a resolution approving a partial payment of an interfund loan from the Sewer Rental Repair Fund to Capital Projects for 1007th Street. The council had approved a resolution to do this loan, and we advanced $250,000 over there in anticipation of the first phases of the projects on the Made Right building being done. Now that we're moving into the next phases of that restoration project being done, we need to finish transferring the rest of the amount over. I did do some financial analysis on this because I knew that the council had some questions about it, and just to assuage some curiosity. This one is anticipated to be paid back out of the increased revenues from the property taxes that building creates. When we started the project, the building, to give you an idea of where that building has been going, in 2005 it was purchased for $515,000. By 2014, when it was sold again, it was sold for $378,000. So the value of the building has been going steadily down over the years and was declining. Just with the improvements that have been made in it to date, it's now valued at $499,500. But the agreement stipulates that by January 1st, 2016, the developer has agreed to a minimum assessment of $1.3 million. So this loan will be paid back by the difference between that $500,000 and the $1.3 million. And again, because I know that there's always a concern there about, well, what does that do to the school districts? I broke it out, and if we were to have left that building alone, it would maybe have reached the $499,000 figure that's on the books right now. But by going to the $1.3 million, even with us using the TIF to repay ourselves, there's another $6,400 a year that's going to be going out to the taxing entities that didn't exist before. So when the question comes up for you for why do you do TIF projects, that's why. If we don't do this project, that money never materializes. The school, the county, the city never get the benefit that we see immediately of that $6,400. And then once we're paid back for the loan that we're making for the improvements to the building, there's another $24,000 that then will get split out amongst those taxing entities. So there's an immediate benefit, but then there's also a delayed benefit that will hit once we get to the point where we're paid off. The other thing that I would point out is that the $1.3 million is a minimum assessment. There's always the possibility that the new assessment on the facility could exceed that. That would be great for us because it just increases those numbers, but we do have a floor in there for the term of that agreement.
Just out of curiosity, so I can understand a little bit better, if they get done with the project and it reaches an assessment of, say, $800,000, so they're short, will they still be assessed at the 1.3, or so they will still pay taxes on the 1.3, so we'll still receive that?
Yeah, they'll pay taxes on the 1.3 through the term of the agreement, which for us would be when that loan is fully paid back.
Okay, thank you.
And then number 8 is a resolution approving the hotel motel program grant funding for 15-16. The council would have received copies of the recommendations from the review committee for that. I will say that in all my time here, this was probably the toughest year for the committee to go through and review and make those recommendations. But it was mainly because we received a lot more in requests than we had available in funding, which is not something that has happened to us in the past. They've always come in fairly even. So there was a lot of balancing and a lot of decisions that had to be made about where the funding allocations would go. There are some organizations that have gotten considerable funding from that in the past that are not recommended for the full amount in the coming fiscal year. So we wanted to make the council aware of that and just see if you wanted to concur with the committee's recommendations or if you felt that you wanted to make any alterations to them.
Lon, is there a way that if in fact we have an overage, which we've had in the past, that we could, it seems like historically we're picking on our historic center, Historic Preservation Commission and the Granger House mostly in there as far as the cutbacks. If we have an overage, is there a way that we could pre-direct that?
Yeah, that's something that we could keep track of on a quarterly basis and see how we're doing with receipts compared to what the budgeted amounts are for what we expect to come in. I think, from my perspective, kind of the broader conversation is with those two organizations in particular. If the council really feels that they are of value, and I don't think there's going to be any question of that they provide value to the community, is whether or not we should look at a way to just get them out of the hotel motel pool altogether. With the scoring criteria set up the way that they are, which is based around bringing people to the community and doing capital projects and advertising, it's not really set up to support operating costs, which is what those two groups use it for. If it's something that the city council really thinks that we should make a commitment to, we probably need to take a look at just figuring out a way to fit them into the general fund going forward and not have them have to compete in hotel motel anymore.
The only other item I had in there is that you could put me down as one that, again, this year sees no value at all in the Area Convention Bureau.
What?
Area Convention Bureau.
Oh, area.
You go down there and ask them where their Marion section is.
Well, we're only giving them.
We have an individual here from the back on it. Do you have a comment? You may
I am
comment.
so new at this. Hello, everyone. My name is Lynette Brunzel. I live at 1825 Bloomington Road in Marion, Iowa. I am currently the director of the Marion Heritage Center for the Marion Historical Society. I have a brief note I'd like to read to the committee tonight, if I can, as far as your recommendations that have been brought forward. This is from Jay Casina. He was here earlier and could not stay. You are probably aware of some of the organizational changes in the Marion Historical Society. Speaking for the new Historical Society, as that is our corporate name, we are presently expanding our educational outreach by becoming a gateway to as many organizations and resources in eastern Iowa and beyond, which deal in history, heritage, and genealogy. In fact, because of the recent installation of Pat Kloffenstein's 250 volumes of library for the Marion history, we believe our role in education will grant sustainability. In the meeting on 7/21, Paul Draper makes tonight a special point of the fact that the tendency of Marion's history is sorely lacking in our community, schools, etc. To increase the attendance at the Heritage Center, we have obtained a grant from the McIntyre Foundation, which enables us to provide free admission to the museum. By doing this, we hope to increase our membership, our main source of operating funds. Our educational plans depend upon the hotel motel tax. A 50% cut in that source of revenue comes, therefore, at the worst time. We respectfully request that you to increase the allocation recommended by the review committee at least $10,000. Still a cut. We feel that it would be a great help to us, as well as a good investment on your part. I thank you.
Good. Yeah, thank you.
Any questions?
Well, that's fine, thank you very much. Lon, you can continue. But I saw her in the back. I thought we'd get some input.
Yeah, and that's really the kind of the core of the question that I had with regarding these. You know, when I first saw the scores came through, we reconvened the committee to go through some of these things in more detail. With Paul's concerns about the CVB, we did have that discussion with the scoring committee members, and that was, I think, kind of the genesis of the big reduction in the amount that they were recommended for funding. They do have a new director that I think is going to have a bit of a different philosophy in how that group operates. And we thought the committee seemed to think that it was worth the investment for a year to see if we get more return on it than we've gotten in the past. And then if we don't, then we revisit that issue again in following years. But with the new game that they were talking about, it was worth giving them a shot for a year. One of the things that I could do, I mean, Paul, I think, has a good suggestion in taking a look at kind of the any anticipated receipts that we might have coming in from hotel motel. I'd also maybe like to take an opportunity to do a comb through on the general fund budget for the coming year and see if there's something we might be able to do on that. One of the things we should have, maybe about by the end of the month or about halfway through August, I will know then down to the dollar where we ended with the general fund balance from last year. We always do projections. I know where we're supposed to end, but I want to see where we actually ended because that might give us the flexibility to just make up that difference out of the general fund budget instead. I didn't feel like even if we were going to look at an overall reduction, that is a pretty dramatic reduction in 1 year. I would think we'd want to work with those groups, as I said, to either figure out a way that they don't have to depend on applying to hotel motel or some kind of a step-down plan over time and not just boom all at once.
Right, right. Yeah, I'd be in favor of funding these alternately somehow, some alternative way. Rather than this hotel, because I understand where they don't make the benchmarks that others would. I could see the Marion Arts Festival obviously would score very high, where the Continual Granger House and Historical Society would score a lot lower. However, the educational advantage that these people have is something I would like to maintain, and if we can fund it somehow, that'd be fine.
Yeah, so what I'd propose is we would just go ahead and do the resolution to concur with the committee's recommendations and make the awards, but then we could also put a motion on there to direct staff to research and come back to council with alternate funding to make up the difference for those other two
Right, and in the future, perhaps we could fund it differently.
Yeah.
You came up with some ideas, and I think so.
Yeah, I think when we do the budget discussions for the coming fiscal year, that's something we need to target those two groups in particular.
Very well. Just for a point of interest, is there any other group out in the audience that would like make a presentation? None noted that I see.
I have two.
You're not in the audience.
Oh.
And I did, Mayor, have one other item that will be on the agenda that was not on this agenda.
Lon, before you go into that, can I just add to the point before we were talking about with the Heritage Center and Granger House? When we're looking at the funding sources, if we can roll the Historic Preservation Committee into that as well, I think you're looking at the same missions, and I think they deserve the funding as well.
Yeah, the core issue here is really that one of the big criteria is whether or not the project has the potential to generate overnight stays. And certainly things like the Barbecue Rendezvous and the Arts Festival have that potential to do that so that the fund can continue to build on itself. But ones that are primarily available for day trips or cater to education don't have that same potential, so they just don't score as well.
Yeah, just a thought just came to my head. You know, we talked about the library increasing this and that, and if the library could dovetail some of this historical society business into their presentations, that would be a great project.
Yeah,
that's all. Now you may speak.
Okay. There are two that I have a concern about. One is Red Cedar, which is dear to my heart. I think with all the musical programs that they do in the schools and here at City Hall, out at Loud Park, I think they, since they're an international music group, I think they really should receive the full amount that they asked for. Also, the Giving Tree Theater, since they give back a lot, and even though they got the $8,000 grant, I think that $15,000 should be upped.
Well, one thing that we aren't aware of what the $35,000 included, what their presentation was. Did you see
No,
anything?
I
don't know what that included. That's a pretty hefty sum.
I would presume that it would be to improve the theater itself, and physical, probably sound, a lot of things, lighting.
Amanda would know.
What's it got? You want to brief description?
Well, the description of the project just gives a general description of what the theater is and does, their mission, and what it's about. So they do list their entire lineup for the upcoming year, all the way through the whole fiscal year, but I believe it would be general operations.
Well, they have royalties they have to pay to put on various plays. I mean, they're not.
Yeah,
All right.
they say that each production has direct expenses of almost $7,000.
I see.
And the discussion that the review committee had related to that wasn't really whether or not it was a good investment of the dollars. It was just about giving that much of the total funding available to any one entity when you had other ones. I mean, if we had followed through with the original way that the scoring was going to come down, the Giving Tree would have been much, much higher, but the other groups, the Historical Society and the Heritage Center, would have been down in like the $1,600 range.
Yeah.
So that was part of the balancing act that the committee went through to try to make sure that we at least met part of the needs of the various groups.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else, Lon? Go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to put on there is Tom had outlined during his section, he showed you the picture of the ground that we're going to be receiving from Genesis Equities for the 6th Avenue corridor extension. The other side of that piece is that our development agreement with them involves us taking our excess property that we're not going to need for that project and adding it to the parcels that they've got for future redevelopment. Now, for us to do that, we have to go through the platting process, and we have to determine a value. So what we'll have on there is a resolution of intent to proceed with that property transfer. That'll direct us to go ahead and get the appraisal started and then start moving forward with the pieces that we won't need.
All right.
That's it.
So with this project, with this roundabout on 6th Avenue development, we don't have any dramatic hiccups at this time.
No, we've not encountered anything that was unexpected.
Very well. Very well.
I have one other item, and it's a hold harmless agreement, and it's for this preaching in the park. Expecting 1,000 people. Have the uptown merchants been advised that there may be this influx of people? It's on a Saturday, and what I'm wondering about is parking, any kind of traffic control, any kind of, like the fire department being there for an EMT in case there's a medical problem. I mean, there's nothing on this application, and I just think that maybe more should be found out.
But it's been approved by the city, though, this
That's what we're
hold
doing.
harmless. Is that correct?
That's what they're wanting us to approve.
No, but I mean, it's by the department heads.
Oh, yeah.
No, I haven't seen anything. I don't have the second sheet that says that all these people have signed off on it. And it just kind of disturbs me, because at 9 in the morning till 10 at night, I presume that's set up and also tear down of everything, and that there won't be any, and they're bringing porta potties in, and Parks, good luck.
Mary Lou, they like to party.
Well, we'll discuss this again on Thursday, correct? Anything else?
Yeah,
I got a question.
if I could, I mean, typical festivals or even on Thursday nights, we typically will have right around that 700 to 1,000 people at the park at any given time. Barbecue rendezvous on a Saturday, we'll have an excess of 1,000 people coming and going through the park. I'm almost sure that all department heads did sign off on that hold harmless event form. I did put under the park section that I did suggest that they would look at off-duty police officers. We made the request that the minimum number of porta potties there. I believe that the police chief himself reviewed that, and he didn't seem to have any issues with it.
Now, who would pay for those?
Pay for the porta potties?
The city would not be paying for those, hopefully.
No.
Okay.
It's the person that
But this is
rents
also 13 hours. I mean, this isn't, from
Well-
6 in the evening till 10.
They're renting the park for that whole period.
Yeah.
If I remember right, I don't believe the event was for that. I thought it was like a 3 to 4 hour slot that the actual event was going on in the evening.
Yeah, the event is scheduled for 4 to 7.
But if they start at 9 in the morning, who knows? I mean, there's just not enough information.
Allows that time for setup, those type of things for them.
I'm glad you spoke up. I had forgotten you were here. I do want to comment and make a positive comment on parks. If you look on the north side or had walked on the north side of the park area at the station, there were some bricks that were settled down and people tripped and all this. The Parks Department went out and reset all of those bricks. They're now even, and that's great. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll pass that along
That
to
was
the operations staff.
very good. I just happened to stumble on them. No, I stumbled on them and the men as they were working, and I was very pleased to see that. So thank you so much. And is that all?
I had a question for Tom.
Go ahead.
The comprehensive plan.
You want me to read it again?
Well, no. Yeah, we need to stay here till 9. How's it coming as far as the update? Not the plan, but the Uptown, yes.
I need to prepare the RFP and get that going. I do. I haven't started it yet.
Okay.
It won't take long. I just the RFP, and that's out.
Are we going to have another meeting on that? Didn't we have a meeting on that scheduled sometime in August?
Maybe you're talking design standards?
The design standard.
Design standards,
Yes.
We're going to hold another meeting, and then we want to hold a public input session.
Yes.
Yeah, the design standards, we spoke specifically about the baseline standards of residential, commercial, and multifamily. An idea at this point, we're reference survey talked about baseline standards. In that regard, the big thing that we talked about, and I'm sure everybody's going to be excited to hear about the whole discussion on snout houses and want to restrict how far a garage can stick out in front of the house, how far we want to go with that. That was the last meeting, and I think, Joe, were you there?
Yes,
You were there?
I was, yeah.
You're on vacation.
But I was thinking the next one was in August or.
Yep, we're going to be meeting in early August and hold a public input session probably towards the end.
Okay, good.
Nothing scheduled, though.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.